One of the most amazing things out of Jesus Culture that I've experienced was I think I was leading. We were doing ministry time, and it was like the last session of one of our winter conferences, and I think Nolan Clark was speaking, and the meeting was over, but there was a ton of ministry going on. Like youth were praying for youth, and the leaders were praying for the youth, and just a bunch of stuff was going on. And it was cool because it started to go out in the halls, and people were lined up in the halls, like the whole sanctuary. People were laid out, and we were singing the song, Delirious song, Obsession, just the chorus, "My heart burns for you, my heart burns for you," and we did that whole song for like an hour. It seemed like it lasted. And just a ton of stuff started happening. People started getting free and dancing and just breaking out. Healings were happening. People were laid out all over the floor. And I could just tell that a lot of passion was being released. I remember one point Banning and Nolan, who had been praying for people in the halls, came back into the sanctuary and we kind of just started dancing on stage and jumping up and down. And, just a bunch of random spontaneous worship started happening. So it was really cool to see that and be a part of that. Personally for me, I just love seeing passion released in people, and it was just cool to see people just be totally released in passion and freedom to worship and express themselves. And you could tell that just all over the room people were having encounters. So that's probably one of the coolest, at least for me, memorable experiences that stick out in my mind. What I love about Jesus Culture is that it's different than, I do a lot of conferences. I travel with Brian Johnson, and we do a lot of conferences, and I get to go to a lot of very cool events and stuff and hear a bunch of speakers. But for me, Jesus Culture is special because, well, for one, I've been a part of it from the beginning and seen it growing. But for me, I just always come with the realization that there's going to be so much passion. And for me, that's really refreshing to me because for me, I love seeing youth ignited with passion, even adults. There's a bunch of adults that come and stuff. And so it's just cool to be a part of something that's feels like a forerunner. It's like we're moving, we're going somewhere. This is new. It doesn't feel like a conference to me. It feels like more of a movement and an experience. You never know what's going to happen. But there's going to be a lot of passion, and God's going to show up. I totally love that about Jesus Culture. Another thing is we do outreach, in our summer conferences, and even when we go to different cities, we go out with the youth, go out in the streets during the morning sessions and what have you. And it's really cool to see people that have never maybe gone out and witnessed to people, or even just talked to people, or expressed, hey, God loves you, or just stepped out in that area. It's really cool to see the youth just begin to step out. And even if something that in their mind that's amazing doesn't happen, it's not that big of a deal, but God totally does something in their heart to release them into hey, I can do this. I can talk to people. I can tell people that God loves them, and just more importantly, just seeing people on the streets get healed and just get encouraged through prophetic words and stuff like that. I love that our Jesus Culture conferences really releases people into the supernatural and out in the streets and going for it. So that's fun. One of the most probably the most life-changing experience I ever had was I think it was 13, and I was at a youth camp actually on the coast of California, and we were in a small group meeting in the morning, and one of the leaders asked, he said, pretend it's Christmas and ask God for anything, like you're asking for a present, ask him for anything you want and write it down. So I wrote down on a piece of paper, I want freedom during worship, I want freedom to worship, and we we left for lunch or whatever, and that night we had a worship meeting. And I felt such a freedom, it was insane. I'd never really raised my hands or just really surrendered myself in worship, but it was totally different. I felt such a freedom to be myself and just totally express my heart to God and my passion. And I remember feeling God's presence so strong that it felt like electricity, waves of electricity going through my body. And I'd never experienced anything like that, so it was kind of scary. I remember actually it got so intense at one point that my hands cramped up, and I felt I remember thinking oh no, I'm never going to be able to play drums again. I laugh about it now, but I was young and I'd never experienced that. But yeah, just this electricity and this love and just this total freedom, just abandonment to go after God during that night. I think that's probably the most life-changing encounter I've ever had. And since then, my heart for worship because that came out of a worship time. My heart for worship, my passion for worship has just grown.